Chosen one, I need you to stop everything and listen carefully to what I am about to tell you. At exactly 5:55 this morning, I was awakened by the audible voice of God. Not a whisper, not an impression. An audible voice that said 3 words that are about to change your entire existence. Reset is initiated. I sat up in bed completely alert, and before I could even process what I had heard, I was caught up into the most detailed vision I have ever experienced. In this vision, I was standing in what appeared to be a massive control room, the most advanced center you can imagine, except this was not earthly technology. The walls were covered with screens, each screen displaying a different aspect of someone's life: financial status, relationship dynamics, health conditions, career trajectory, spiritual state, mental condition. Every area of human existence being monitored in real time. An angel approached me and led me to a specific section. And when we stopped, I saw a screen with your name at the top. Your entire life was displayed. But what caught my attention was this: the settings were not running at design capacity. And then the most senior angel in the room approached your screen and spoke one command. Reset initiated. The old configurations began to clear, and new settings upgraded beyond anything that had existed before, began to load. And then God spoke, and his voice filled that entire control room. He said, "Tell my chosen one that the reset is not optional. It is already in progress. What was broken is being fixed. What was wrong is being corrected. What was limited is being expanded. What was delayed is being accelerated. The divine reset has been initiated. There is no going back to the old settings. Forward is the only direction now." I sat with that vision for hours after I woke. And then the Spirit showed me what the reset actually looked like from heaven's perspective. Not the control room language, the picture beneath the picture. Go to the comments right now and type, "The Father is running." Let that be your declaration before I tell you what I saw. And subscribe, because the word coming through this channel in the days ahead carries the instruction for how to walk in the reset after it completes. Now, because heaven showed me the reset in the language of the oldest story Jesus ever told. Luke chapter 15, a father, 2 sons. And a moment when the younger son, after spending everything, after the famine, after feeding pigs in a foreign country, and finding himself longing to eat what the pigs ate, came to himself. That phrase, "he came to himself." He had been so far from his true condition for so long that returning to his own mind was the beginning of the reset. Not the arrival back at the Father's house, not the reconciliation, not the robe and the ring and the feast. Coming to himself, the recognition of what the current settings had produced. The honest assessment of where the wrong configuration had led. And chosen one, I want to speak to that moment because I believe it is exactly where you are tonight. Not at the bottom of the pit, not still in the far country, at the moment of coming to yourself. At the moment when the gap between who you were made to be and who the hard season has had you functioning as becomes impossible to ignore. That is not condemnation. That is the beginning of the reset. The son did not come to himself with self-hatred. He came to himself with a plan. He said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants." He prepared his speech. He practiced his reduced ask. He was not coming back to claim sonship. He was coming back to negotiate servanthood, because the wrong settings had convinced him that what he lost through his own choices could only be recovered through demotion, that the best he could hope for was to work his way back, to earn a diminished version of what had been. And chosen one, I want to speak to the speech you have been rehearsing. The version of the return where you come back asking for less than what was written over your life before the hard season. The negotiated ask, the reduced expectation. The plan that protects you from the disappointment of hoping for restoration and receiving something smaller. Heaven has seen that speech. Heaven knows the argument, and heaven's response to the speech is what happened before the Son could deliver it. The text says, while he was still a long way off, his Father saw him. Still a long way off, not when he arrived at the gate, not when he was close enough for the Father to recognize him, while he was still a long way off, which means the Father had been watching. Every day since the departure, the Father had been standing somewhere from which the road was visible, watching the road, not in grief, only in expectation. Because what the Father knew that the Son in the far country could not know was that the Son had not stopped being a son by leaving. The settings that made him a son were not configured by the Son's choices. They were configured by the Father's design, and no amount of wrong choices by the Son could change the settings the Father had established. The Son came to himself thinking, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. The Father saw him coming and thought, my son who was dead is alive again. My son who was lost is found. They were not looking at the same thing. The Son was looking at the record of the departure. The Father was looking at the person returning. Do not skip this, chosen one. I want to speak to the record you have been reading as the evidence of your current standing. The things that happened in the far country, the choices that consumed what you had, the ways the wrong settings produced outcomes you are still accounting for. The enemy has been using that record as the evidence that the reset is not available to you. He has been pointing to it and saying, look at this, look at how far the departure went, look at what the wrong settings cost. Look at how much of the inheritance was spent, and using it to convince you that coming back means negotiating servanthood. But while you have been rehearsing the reduced speech, the Father has been watching the road. And the moment you turned toward home, the moment you came to yourself, and began moving in the direction of the house, he saw you while you were still a long way off. And he ran. The text says, he ran and embraced him and kissed him. The Father ran. The most dignified person in the story was the one who ran, not the returning son who had rehearsed his speech, the Father who saw the direction of travel and could not move slowly enough to let the Son arrive at his own pace. He ran to close the distance that the Son's wrong choices had created. He ran before the speech could be delivered. He ran before the explanation was given. He ran before the repentance was expressed. He ran because what the Father wanted was not the Son's performance of contrition. It was the Son. The reset was initiated not when the Son arrived, but when the Son turned, and the Father ran to meet the turning. Chosen one, that is what the control room showed me. The reset was not initiated this morning. The reset was initiated the moment you turned, and the Father has been running toward the turning ever since. Now let me speak to what the Father brought, because the Son finally arrived and he began his speech. Father, I have sinned against heaven, and before you, I am no longer worthy to be called your son, and the Father interrupted the speech. He did not let the Son finish the negotiated ask for servanthood. He called to the servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. 3 things, each one specific, each one a direct response to what the wrong settings had stripped. The best robe, the ring, the shoes, I want to speak to each one because this is the specific language of the reset. The robe. In the far country, the son's clothing had deteriorated to the point where the text implies the poverty of his condition was visible. The wrong settings had produced visible evidence that the original covering was gone. And the father's first command was, bring the best robe. Not a robe, not a serviceable covering, not the robe appropriate to a returning servant, the best robe. Chosen one, I want to speak to the specific way the hard season has stripped the covering. The way the wrong settings left something visible, something that others could see. Something that your own mirror shows you that signals the gap between where you are and where you were designed to be. The Father's response to that visibility is not a gradual restoration of a lesser covering. It is the best robe immediately, before the feast, before the explanation is completed, before anything has been earned or demonstrated. The best robe covers what the far country exposed. And in this season, the covering being placed over you is not proportional to what you lost. It is proportional to the Father's wardrobe, the ring. In the ancient world, a signet ring was authority. It was the seal of the household. Whoever wore it could act in the name of the one who gave it. The son had left with his inheritance and had nothing left to show. The father put the ring back on his hand. Not a token ring. The signet, the authority of the house. The ability to act in the Father's name, chosen one. The authority that the wrong settings stripped the influence. The credibility, the capacity to act. In the fullness of your assignment, the ring is being returned. Not partially, the signet. And what you put your hand to in the season ahead will carry a weight that has nothing to do with how much was spent in the far country. It will carry the weight of the Father's house, because the ring is back on your hand. The shoes, this is the detail most people miss. In that culture, servants did not wear shoes, sons did. When the father said, put shoes on his feet, he was not providing comfort for a tired traveler. He was making a declaration. He was refusing the servant identity the son had decided was the best he could negotiate. The shoes said, you are not a servant in this house. You are a son. You came back rehearsing a speech about servanthood. The speech is over. Here are your shoes. Walk like what you are. Chosen one. The reset is not the restoration of a diminished version. It is the refusal of the negotiated return. Heaven is interrupting the speech. Heaven is bringing the robe, the ring, and the shoes before the reduced ask can be completed. You did not come back to become a servant. You came back to come home, and the Father is not processing your application for hired help. He is throwing a feast, because this son was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. Now let me release what heaven is declaring over the specific areas of your life. Over your finances, I declare, the son spent his entire inheritance. There was nothing left. The wrong settings had taken it to zero, and the father's response was, kill the fattened calf. The fattened calf was the most expensive thing on the property, reserved for the most important occasion. The return of the son was worth the fattened calf. Not. Let him work his way back to the level of financial stability, the fattened calf. Now tonight, Deuteronomy 8:18 says God gives you the power to produce wealth to confirm his covenant. The covenant was not terminated by the departure. The covenant was always the Father's to keep. And in the next 21 days, a provision will arrive that does not match the logic of the earning. It will arrive the way the fattened calf arrived, not because you worked back to deserving it, but because the Father decided that the return was worth celebrating. Receive it as the feast, not the wage. Receive it as the feast, not the wage. Over your relationships I declare, when the feast began, the Father did not readmit the Son on probation. He did not say, "We will have a small meal and see how the first month of return goes." He said, "Kill the fattened calf. Invite everyone. Music, dancing, celebration." The relational atmosphere around the return was not cautious. It was extravagant, and chosen one, I want to speak to the relational reset. The people who were in the far country with you, some of them, were the wrong settings in human form. They were attached to the version of you that was operating below design capacity. And as the reset completes, they will not know what to do with the robe. The robed version of you does not fit the story they have about who you are. And they will either adjust their story or the distance will become natural. Both are the right outcome. Because what the Father is sending into this season, the new connections, the divine appointments, the people who recognize the ring and the authority it carries, those people are not attached to the far country version. They are attached to the Son who came home. And when the paths converge, the convergence will have the same feeling the feast had, something being restored to where it always belonged. Watch for the people in this season who respond to the robe rather than the record, who see the ring and know what it means, who are not confused by the shoes. Those are the Father's guests at the feast, and they are already being summoned. Over your calling, I declare. The Father did not return the Son to the same position he left from. He returned him to sonship. And sonship was always the position from which the calling operated. The inheritance the Son spent in the far country was not the calling. The inheritance was the resource. And the calling the specific assignment that required the specific person who had been through the specific experience of the far country and the specific moment of coming to himself. That calling was never spent. It was waiting for the Son with the robe and the ring and the shoes. Chosen one, the reset is not restoring you to the pre-departure position. It is advancing you to the post-return position. And the post-return position is a position the pre-departure version of you did not yet have the experience to occupy, because the calling requires someone who has been in the far country, who knows what the wrong settings produce, who has come to themselves, who turned toward home before the resources were fully spent. That person, the returning Son, not the Son who never left, is the person the assignment was designed for. Your testimony is part of the assignment. The far country is part of the credential. And in this season, the calling will become specific, not in theory. In the specific conversation, the specific opening, the specific moment when the returning Son speaks to someone still in the far country who recognizes that the robe is real. That moment is coming. And when it comes, it will not feel like ministry. It will feel like coming home for the second time. Over your identity, I declare. The Son came back with a name for himself, no longer worthy to be called your Son. He had renamed himself according to what the far country had done to him. The Father never used that name, not once. He called him his Son, the dead Son who was alive again, the lost Son who was found. Those were the only names the Father used. And chosen one, the name the hard season gave you the identity assembled from the wrong settings. And what they cost the Father is not using that name. He interrupted the speech before you could introduce yourself by it. He ran before the name could be spoken. The identity being restored in this season is not a negotiated identity. It is the original one, the one that was established before the departure, the one that could not be terminated by the choices in the far country. Your name is Son. Your name is Daughter. The shoes are on your feet. Walk like what you are. Over your mind, I declare. The Son came to himself. That phrase is a description of mental reset, the return of clarity, the reorientation to what was real after a long period of operating in the disorientation of the wrong settings. 2 Timothy 1-7 says, God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind. The sound mind is the Son coming to himself, the reorientation to the Father's house as the reference point for what is real. And in this season, the fog that has made the road back seem unclear, the confusion about whether the return was even possible, whether the Father was still watching the road, that fog is lifting. You have already come to yourself. You are already on the road. You are already moving in the direction of the house, and the Father is already running. The sound mind is the one that knows, I am the one he is running toward. Now, I want to pause and speak honestly, because this word tonight, the control room and the reset, the Father running while the Son was still a long way off, the robe, the ring, the shoes, the speech interrupted before the reduced ask could be completed. This required someone to sit with Luke 15 until what it says to the specific person watching from the far country tonight became clear. To carry it to the platform, to keep the platform going so that the next person who turns toward home and starts practicing their servant speech finds this word when they search for it. That work requires resources. YouTube has a feature called Super Thanks. It is below this video. I want to say plainly what it is and what it is not. It is not the fattened calf. Your feast was prepared before you arrived. The reset was initiated before you found this video. But if tonight the Father interrupted your speech, if the robe and the ring and the shoes landed in the place where the servant application had been living, and you have the means to say, this word reached me when I was still a long way off. I wanted to reach the next person who is on the road and has not yet seen the Father running. Super thanks. Is that saying not a payment for the feast you already received? A participation in making sure the feast can be found by the next prodigal who needs to know the Father is watching the road. Small, voluntary, received as exactly what it is. And if this is not your season, if the far country is still active and the resources reflect it, the Father is running. In the comments is the declaration, it is the moment you turn toward home. And the Father saw the turning, and he ran. Heaven records the direction of travel, not the distance still remaining. Now hear the warning, do not skip this, the older son. When the feast was happening, the older son was in the field, and when he heard the music and the dancing, he refused to go in. He said to the Father, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. The older son was angry at the reset, not at you, at the reset itself, at the fact that the return was celebrated rather than penalized, at the fact that the wrong settings and their cost did not determine the level of restoration. And chosen one, in the 72 hours after tonight, in the window between the turning and the full arrival at the feast, there will be an older son voice. It may come from outside, someone who has watched your journey and has a record of the far country that they believe should limit the celebration, who calculated the cost of the departure and believes the return should be proportional to the damage. Or it may come from inside, your own voice, running the older son's argument against the unreasonableness of the father's response. Why the best robe? Why the ring? Why not a period of proving before the feast? And the father's answer to that voice is the same answer he gave, the older son. Son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad. For this your brother was dead, and is alive, was lost, and is found. The reset is not contingent on the older son's approval. The feast is already happening. The robe is already on. The ring is already on the hand. The shoes are already on the feet. The older son's objection does not change what the father did. It only determines whether the older son comes into the feast. Archangel Michael stands at the entrance of the feast. His mandate, the reset, is protected. No voice inside or outside unsettles what the Father has declared. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." The weapon of the older son's accounting, the weapon of the reduced speech, the weapon of the servant identity the son rehearsed on the road. None shall prosper because the father ran, and the robe is on, and the ring is on the hand. Declare this with me, out loud. Right now, the reset has been initiated, not by my performance. By the Father's design, the old settings had me operating as less than what I was made to be, and the Father saw the screen, and he said, "Reset initiated." I come to myself. I recognize the gap between where the wrong settings took me and where the original design placed me, and I turn toward home. I do not finish the servant speech. I release the negotiated return. I release the reduced ask. I release the identity assembled from what the far country cost. I receive what the Father brings. The best robe, the covering of the original identity. The ring, the authority of the house, restored to my hand. The shoes, the declaration that I am a son, not a servant. I walk into the feast, not after a period of proving, now, because the Father said, now, because the Father said, my son who was dead is alive again, was lost and is found. And I agree with the Father's assessment over the older son's accounting. The reset is complete in the spirit. It is manifesting in the natural. The old settings are being cleared. The new settings are loading. In Jesus' name, Amen, chosen one. If the Father ran toward you tonight, if the speech was interrupted and the robe landed before you could finish the servant, ask like this video. Let it be the sound of the music starting, the feast beginning, the announcement that the lost one is found. Go to the comments right now and type, "The Father is running." Let it be written. Let heaven see the direction of travel. Subscribe, because the next word carries the instruction for what it looks like to walk in the reset. How to wear the robe without returning to the servant identity. How to use the ring, the authority restored to your hand, in the specific contexts the assignment requires. How to stay in the feast when the older son voice tries to pull you back to the accounting. The instruction for after the return is coming. Do not miss it. Find the person who came to your mind during this word, the one who is still in the far country practicing the servant speech, who believes the best they can negotiate is a diminished version of what they had before, who does not know the Father is watching the road. Send this to them. Tell them, the Father saw you while you were still a long way off, and he ran. The robe is already in his hands. The ring is already off his finger. The feast is already being prepared. Turn toward home. Go now, chosen one. Go as the one who came to himself, who turned in the direction of the Father's house, who had the speech ready and found the Father already running before the speech could begin. The reset is not a gradual return to a lesser version. It is the best robe, the ring, the shoes, the feast, and the Father who could not move slowly enough to let you arrive at your own pace. He is still running. You are still a long way off, and he has already seen you. Amen.